Greetings all, Belgrist here. This is my first video on my new channel. We'll mostly be talking about pop culture, comic books, video games, sci-fi, horror. But for this video, I want to talk about something that's a little more serious. We'll be talking about the incident that happened in Texas with Austin Metcalf and Anthony Carmelo, or Camelo. I believe it's Carmelo. Old Selgris here is seeing a lot of stuff on the internet that is giving him pause. I think there's a rush to judgment in this case. I mean, it would appear that a lot of people assume that Anthony Carmelo is 100% guilty, and that I must choose my words here carefully, that Austin Metcalf is 100% innocent, and by innocent, versus guilty in the case of Austin Metcalf and that part of it. I don't mean he deserved to be stabbed and murdered or killed or whatever. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it seems that the young man, Carmelo, is not being given the benefit of the doubt, and this is quite disturbing to me. Let's look at the facts of the case as we know. Quite murky, but so far what we know is that there was a track meet, and during that track meet, there was a rainstorm with some kind of downpour, heavy shower, and that Carmelo took shelter under the tent of the opposing team that Metcalf and his brother are part of. Now, during him taking shelter with the rest of them under this tent during the shower, and I do wonder how intense the shower was. I have a feeling being in Texas, it was very intense because we're getting into spring. There were a lot of thunderstorms in the area, downpours, and maybe the guy just ran under that tank that was closest. Like how far, I do wonder, was his tent away from the tent of the team under which he took shelter. Anyway, the group of boys there, the track participants, including Metcalf, didn't like that Carmelo was under the tent and told him to leave. Well, if you're in that situation, you want to go out and get rained on, get a downpour on you, or get struck by lightning. Now, what happens next? I've heard conflicting reports. Some reports say that Carmelo reached into his backpack and pulled something out, which later turned out to be a knife, obviously. Then there are other reports that say that Metcalf reached down and grabbed his book bag, first touched it, and Carmelo was like, don't do that. If you do that again, you'll be sorry, basically paraphrasing. Well, other reports are that, like I say, Carmelo reached down and pulled something out of his backpack. And then, unfortunately, turned out to be a knife. Then there are reports that either Metcalf pushed Carmelo or that he just got in his face. I think he pushed him is the most credible one that I've heard, because I think the twin brother of Metcalf, of Austin Metcalf, said that's what happened. And some other anonymous witnesses that were quoted by the police department. And then Carmelo stabbed him with a knife, apparently in the heart, and killed him. And Carmelo fled the scene. When apprehended by the police a short time later, Carmelo asked, after saying, they said, "Oh, we got the after overhearing the policeman on the little walkie-talkie things they're communicating with headquarters, says, yeah, we got the alleged suspect." Karmelo said, "No, I'm not the alleged suspect. I did it." And then next he asked, could what he had done have been self-defense, and if the other guy was all right. That's supposedly what he said. And then after that, we found out the guy wasn't, and he was arrested. Now, I don't understand why he's being charged with first-degree murder. Because let's say he's being honest with that statement, if the other guy was correct. He was being correct with that, I should say. Sorry, bit of a flub there. He was saying that, asking if the other guy was all right. Might have thought he did damage but didn't kill him. In my understanding, Texas, like most other jurisdictions, this was in Frisco, Texas, apparently, city in Texas. More like a town just north of Dallas, as part of the Big D area, like Central Texas. Anyway, he asked if Metcalf was okay, if he's going to be okay. Well, then how can he be charged, assuming, he's being honest and that's true, how could he be charged with murder one? Because that requires premeditation, that he meant to kill Metcalf, that he planned it out. If anything, it would be murder two, at the most. Maybe murder two with aggravated assault, depending upon the pushing and shoving, if there were any hands, you could change. And another thing to keep in mind, people say, oh, he's completely unjustified in pulling the knife. Well, maybe, but he was surrounded by, an opposing track team, and Austin Metcalf might have been the one who pushed him. But how were the other boys reacting? Is my question for all this. There's just so many things we don't know. And then there are people using the fact that, oh, he on his Instagram he was posing with like weapons and he's a gangbanger. Well, even if he was, this is like a 17-year-old boy and he's posing with weapons, quoting lines from popular culture, or maybe some of these weapons weren't even real, but let's say they were. This is like a 17-year-old boy, and both, he's African American, but both white and African American Hispanic teens, unfortunately, young boys, teens and preteens. Um, that sort of violent rap culture and hip hop culture is very big with them. So that doesn't mean he's like a bad kid or guilty. I mean, according to his father, this kid worked two jobs and had a 3.7 GPA, and he also was like on the track team and was also active in football in his at his high school in his division. So he doesn't really sound like a bad kid to me. I mean, we don't have any like evidence he was like burglarizing homes or selling drugs. He was just fooling around on Instagram with his friends. I mean, who amongst us, didn't do that when they were teens? Talk braggadociously, or if we had social media when we were younger, did those things. So that doesn't mean that he's like some Bonnie and Clyde type, like a cold-blooded killer or a bad seed. Or no, am I justifying what he did? No. If he committed a crime, he should pay for it. But the thing is, did he mean to take the life of Austin Metcalf? I don't think murder one is appropriate in this case. I think at most murder two, perhaps with aggravating circumstance assault. That's what I would go with. I don't think you could reduce it to murder three or manslaughter simply because he probably shouldn't have had the gun. God, what am I talking about? I was thinking about his Instagram. He shouldn't have had the knife. Like that is a potentially deadly weapon. The that raises it up when it's all a deadly weapon. That's a factor that has to be taken into account and hooked up to that charge. But being charged with murder one, having like $1 million bond to be bailed out. I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous, in my opinion. It's like an overreach and an overreaction. People are mortified. I mean, they really are, and it is a tragedy. I mean, Austin Metcalf apparently had a 3.97 GPA and had already been looking into colleges, and he had been either preemptively accepted, I've heard conflicting things, or he was applying. But either way, this is a tragedy. Two lives have been destroyed. One is dead. The other's in prison. He won't be going on, Karmelo in prison to be on any football teams anytime soon. I mean, even if it's reduced to murder too. Another reason I think it should be murder too, without the premeditation, is because this case is going to get overturned at appeal, even if he's convicted. If he gets a good lawyer, if it's murder one, because premeditation is going to be very hard to prove. Like I say, there are possibly mitigating factors here too. Like people say, oh, he couldn't have been afraid for his life, or even afraid he's going to get a bad ass whooping because the guy, Metcalf just pushed him, Karmelo at most. But how many other guys were under that tent? That were on Metcalf's team. And Metcalf, and there's a conflicting report of Metcalf picking up his stuff. Was he gesturing to like throw it out in the rain, like you get out here, you bum, kind of situation? And how severe was this downpour? Like, how far away also was the opposing tent where Karmelo was supposed to be? I don't understand. We've all known people who have been in sports, people have been in sports themselves, when they were in high school or at the collegiate level. And I know there's rivalries and the like, but in my opinion, that's being kind of, people get caught up with peer pressure and the whole for the moment thing and team spirit. But if there's like a downpour going on, it might even have been a thunderstorm, who knows? And the guy's tent's like quite a ways away. Are you gonna just, push him out in the rain because he's like on the opposing team? People said, oh, he could have like messed with their food or their track equipment or their clothing, because their duffel bags are there. Well, I think, there's always a chance that, kids joke around. It's relating back to the stuff that Carmelo posted on Instagram. So, that can always happen, but I don't think, most people are malicious enough to actually harm you. Like, who knows? They could put like X-Lax in your food or something like that, or itching powder in your shorts. Who knows? But I don't think it's really a big concern to the point where you push someone out to a downpour, maybe a thunderstorm. So I think mistakes were made here on both sides, and I don't like how it's being, presented so cut and dry. That Carmelo was completely to blame, and Metcalf was an angel. Even though the evidence of no past history of violence that we know of yet with Carmelo or bad behavior in general, like very bad behavior, except for, just posing with, I'm like a gangster on like, some hip hop type stuff on Instagram. I mean, you're working the two jobs and the 3.7 GPA and, track star, and, maybe to a lesser degree, the Metcalf, because he was there at the track meet too and wanting to be a football player. I don't think that really says like bad kid, like usually bad kids don't have time to do those sort of things, especially keeping up the grades like that or working the two jobs. So I still think I'm very sad and it's a tragedy that Metcalf is dead, but I think there's very much a rush to judgment here. And I do wonder if it might have to do with certain political narratives. Hate to bring race into it. And I admire Metcalf's father there for saying I forgive Carmelo, but there are, there are inescapable racial realities in the United States, historical and contemporaneously, that have to be addressed here. I mean, there was like recently Ben Shapiro, that little worm from the Daily Wire, was saying they should release Derek Chauvin. Old Selgris is a pretty forgiving guy. I'm a secular humanist, even though heck, maybe I'm not really even human, but who knows? But I believe in that general philosophy. Let's say a secular essentialist. Essentialist, yes, a secular essentialist. Let me say. Then there's the whole thing of sentience versus sapienness. But we won't get into that right now. But getting back to Ben Shapiro, he wanted to free Derek Chauvin, that piece of crap. In my opinion, I mean Derek Chauvin is, in my humble opinion, 100% guilty. He did it. You shouldn't be released. And if you did, that would definitely stoke racial tensions and would undo, quote unquote, any good that Trump has done. I think it's debatable if Trump has done any good. I think Trump's a POS too. That's just my own view of old Silver's own view. Trump is a POS, and Ben Shapiro is definitely a POS. Look at his stance on the whole Israel-Palestine conflict. Like, I know his ethnic background, and I understand that generational cultural trauma, or trauma, I should say, not, sometimes it might sound like I'm saying drama, but I'm saying trauma. But still, that doesn't justify what's going on there now. It doesn't. Doesn't it? It doesn't justify the displacement, the refugee crisis, the collective punishment. In my opinion, trending towards genocide. It's not as genocide. Heck, it's genocide outright right now, in my opinion. That's my humble opinion. But how this all connects to Metcalf and Carmelo is that I think there are some bad actors on both sides, but in particular on the right, because there's typically bad actors on the right. I hate to say it, but it's true. There are usually bad actors on the right and on the left too. But in most cases, such as this, the real bad actors, the majority of them, are on the right, in particular the far right. And they're making hay of this because Karmelo is being presented as the black gang banger no good. Yes, a boy. And Metcalf is being presented as the white, evangelical Protestant background angel who was just minding his own business. And all of a sudden, dying, Ghetto decided to kill him and stab him in the heart for no reason, completely 100% unprovoked. Where the truth, I think, lies somewhere in the middle, perhaps a little more towards Metcalf's side, really, than in the middle, because no one deserves to be killed just for that. But on the other side of the coin, you're being surrounded by a group of kids, and you're a kid yourself, you're going to kick your ass because you're under their tent in a rainstorm. Who knows? Maybe with thunder, lightning. As part of it, you want to go outside and get rained on and potentially hit by lightning because lightning has hit sports fields and sports stadiums before many times. I mean, we've seen it, where like they'll be practicing football and a whole bunch of them will get electrocuted because it'll hit like somewhere in the field or somewhere in the stands, travel down and electrocute a whole lot of them. The players, if they're doing track and field, if they're doing soccer, if they're doing football, we see it happen all the time, especially in the deep south of the U.S. So in closing, I think people are rushing to judgment very quickly here. I think it's inappropriate, and everybody should take a step back. Just wait till all the facts are being presented. But I think there are some bad actors, a la Shapiro, with Chauvin, as I mentioned, the whole campaign to free Chauvin, that are stoking the fires of this on purpose for their own political and or financial benefit. That is my humble opinion. What's going on? Well, all. Till next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Farewell from the abyss, the abysmal representative, Phil here.